Don't you hate it when you're working hard at something and then you start to get that tired, sluggish feeling? It's the worst, right? Because it makes it so much harder to get anything done. Well, whether it's a good or bad thing, energy drinks have become a popular solution to that problem for millions of people around the world. They typically contain high amounts of sugar or caffeine that are effective in giving you that burst of energy. Something like $50 billion worth of energy drinks are sold globally every year, with around 40% of that coming from the United States. The most popular ones being Red Bull and Monster. They are far ahead of any of the others, and that has been the case for 20 years now. But over those 20 years, there has been another notable brand consistently following in third place called Rockstar. I can't help but compare it to the poster for Lethal Weapon 3 with Leo Getz squeezing his way in there by peeking his head over the shoulders of Riggs and Murtaugh, and I do not mean for that to be disrespectful. The market for energy drinks is so large that even at third place, Rockstar is nearly $1 billion a year brand. So for this video, I want to try to explain their growth and success over the years while putting it into context with everything that has been happening with the rest of the market, and trust me, there has been a lot happening. Russell Weiner is the main person behind Rockstar Energy, and probably the single greatest reason behind its success. He started it in 2001, remained in charge, and maintained at least 85% ownership until selling it to Pepsi for $3.85 billion in 2020. According to Forbes, his net worth is now over $4 billion, and he's not shy about it either. He has bought all these luxurious homes, a 160-foot yacht. On his Wikipedia page, there's a photo of him with musician Rod Stewart. All of it portrays the image of an extravagant, well, rock star lifestyle, so the name fits perfectly. In the past, they have even used the tagline, "Party like a rock star," and the idea is that the drink gives you the energy you need to do it. Now, I do want to point out that Russell Weiner's father is Michael Savage, a popular yet controversial radio show host, best known for talking about right-wing politics. That is relevant in a few different ways. For one, in 2009, Michael Savage made some comments that were seen as offensive toward the LGBT community. In response, they boycotted Rockstar Energy, which may not have been fair considering Michael Savage never had any official involvement with the company. He was simply the father of the founder. But it was seen as like a family operation because his mom worked as chief financial officer and owned 15% of it. They acted fast on the situation by disavowing those comments, showing support for the community by donating $100,000 to LGBTQ rights organizations, and his mother resigned from her position. All in all, I would say it was a minor scandal that's at least worth mentioning, but maybe the bigger reason his father's political radio show is relevant here is because Russell initially wanted to follow along those lines and become a politician. He studied political science at San Diego State University and in 1998 ran for a seat in the California Assembly. He lost that election, only receiving 30% of the vote, but there was a hidden victory attached. His efforts caught the attention of Maurice Canbar, who happened to be a friend of his father's and the owner of Sky Vodka. Weiner was hired by his company to be part of new product development, and that is where energy drinks first showed up on his radar. Red Bull was new to the United States. It had been introduced only a few years earlier and quickly became a popular drink to mix with vodka. You know, Red Bull and vodka, it's a logical pairing. So being part of new product development at Sky Vodka, Weiner suggested that they start making their own version of Red Bull since everyone was mixing it with their product anyway. I think it's funny that he even came up with the name Rockstar. He says because rock stars have a lot of energy. The idea was rejected, partially because they didn't like the name, so he left the company, took out a $50,000 mortgage on his condominium, and set out to start his own business. He hired a marketing expert to create that iconic can design and logo with the black and yellow color scheme, and hired a company to help him create the recipe for it, going through 700 of them before finally settling on one that was a little bit sweeter than Red Bull. You have to remember that Red Bull was the standard. That's what everything was compared to, because at the time, they were still the only notable energy drink on the market. Monster Monster and Bang or whatever else you drink did not exist yet. However, because Red Bull had recently become such a sensation, there were dozens of new competitors that also saw opportunity in the emerging market. When Rockstar made its debut in 2001, the big thing that made it stand out from all the others was the fact that it was sold in a 16-ounce can. I know that might not sound like a big deal, but I don't think we would be talking about Rockstar today otherwise. It was twice the size of Red Bull for the same price. That is literally how they would advertise it. And by the way, I think it's interesting that in the 1930s, during the Great Depression, Pepsi did something very similar to gain some market share on Coca-Cola, so this was kind of like the new generation of it. He used his connection at Sky Vodka to find a distributor to get Rockstar inside of grocery stores and convenience stores through select parts of the northwestern part of the US. Early on, he would advertise it by painting the logo on an old limousine and driving it around. It was a comparatively small operation, with $2.8 million in sales that first year. But considering that the demand for energy drinks was multiplying at a rapid pace, and his product stood out so much from the market leader and everything else out there, the sales grew to over $200 million by 2005. A lot happened in the market over those 4 years. Obviously, Monster was introduced by a beverage company called Hansen's and had become its own mini sensation at that point, but also the biggest beverage companies, Coke and Pepsi, had also started selling their own energy drinks. I made a video about Coke versus Pepsi, and if you watch it, you will quickly realize that as soon as a beverage category starts gaining traction, it does not take long before both of them are getting involved in a big way and oftentimes taking control of it. In the year 2000, Pepsi had acquired the beverage company Sobe right when they were getting ready to introduce a new energy drink called Adrenaline Rush. Then the following year, Pepsi introduced Amp Energy that has been co-branded with Mountain Dew. Coca-Cola was a little bit behind there, so to catch up, they came out with Full Throttle in late 2004, and only a few months later it made this big agreement with Rockstar to distribute the drink all across the United States, with the exception of the area in the Northwest that would still be covered by their initial distributor. I am sure that I don't have to tell you that having Coca-Cola distribute a beverage nationally tends to be a big push for the brand, though reportedly, Russell Weiner felt that they were putting disproportionate attention towards some of their other brands and did not like the fact that they were pursuing other energy drinks, specifically his main competitor, also selling in 16-ounce cans, Monster. Coca-Cola was looking to potentially buy them, so in 2009, Rockstar jumped over to their biggest competitor by agreeing to a decade-long distribution deal with Pepsi. Is everybody following this? At the time of the deal, Pepsi and Rockstar separately expressed ambitions to become the market leader, which I should say has yet to happen, but Pepsi was really putting their faith into it. I guess as part of the deal, they were unable to make any other deals with competing energy drinks, which probably helps explain why they discontinued Adrenaline Rush almost right away, and over the next decade, the only other relevant thing that they did was introduce a few of those Mountain Dew branded energy drinks. Then, in 2014, Coca-Cola finally did make this landmark deal with Monster. It was kind of complicated, but essentially, Coca-Cola bought 16.7% of Monster for $2.15 billion, and they traded ownership of some beverages. Monster received Full Throttle and all the other smaller energy drinks that were owned by Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola received all the sodas and juices that were owned by Monster, which, remember, was the entirety of their business before Monster was introduced. I realize there is a lot to keep track of here, and it just keeps getting more complicated. As I mentioned in the beginning, in 2020, Rockstar was bought by Pepsi. They already had that big distribution deal, but this was the first time that Russell Weiner had given up any actual ownership of it outside of his family. Shortly after taking it over, Pepsi made some major changes to try and revive the brand. Rockstar was privately owned and then part of a much larger company, so official numbers for it have never been specifically reported, but it's believed that the brand was having some trouble, becoming outdated and starting to get lost in the shuffle among all the other competing energy drinks that had been growing over the past couple decades. So in 2021, the logo was redesigned, the cans were redesigned, and they debuted the changes with Rockstar's first ever Super Bowl commercial. When Russell Weiner was in charge, he had always shied away from traditional advertising. Their marketing budget was typically far lower than their main competitors and spent on things like models or sponsoring action sports. So spending big money like this on a traditional Super Bowl commercial is in itself representative of having new owners with a new strategy. Also, now that the initial distribution deal was over and Pepsi had taken full control, they were now able to make new deals with other energy drinks. And they did not waste any time. Only a month after the acquisition, they made a distribution deal with the company that owned Bang that ultimately fell apart. In 2022, that company filed for bankruptcy, which allowed Bang to be acquired by Monster, who of course is heavily associated with Coca-Cola. So in a twisty way, Bang did the exact opposite of Rockstar by making the jump from Pepsi to Coke. Though in 2022, Pepsi did become involved with a different brand called Celsius. They paid $550 million to buy 8.5% of it and obtained exclusive distribution rights. To this day, Red Bull remains on its own, but every other leading brand, including Rockstar, has had heavy involvement from either Coke or Pepsi, and sometimes both of them. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about Rockstar Energy? Does it deserve to be on the same level as Red Bull or Monster, or does it make sense that they're still trying to squeeze their way behind the other two? It's been that way for quite a while now, so maybe that's just how it's meant to be. Though, now that a huge company like Pepsi is in control, I think there is a theoretical potential to reach that next level, but what do you think they would have to do to make that happen? And any other thoughts you have about Rockstar Energy or any of these other energy drinks, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching.